And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause.
All right, that's enough. Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
We're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Special Saturday edition of the program with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Breaking news coming via ESPN and Pete Thamel, and that is that Tennessee has decided to move on from Nico Iamaleava. So the much ballyhooed quarterback's time at Tennessee is done, according to Chris Lowe of ESPN. He told Joey Hausley, Tennessee's offensive coordinator, that he had filled out his paperwork for the transfer portal, and that was on Friday evening. He skipped practice on Friday afternoon, the orange and white game on Saturday. So, Caleb, I can't recall a story moving as quickly as this one has, maybe other than the Lane Kiffin departure, where it was kind of 0 to Mach 10 in no time. This feels similar in that way. It just feels like things moved really fast and nobody, including Josh Heupel or Tennessee's administrative staff, could get a firm grasp on this thing. Your thoughts, just initial reaction.
Yeah, I am beyond shocked on how fast this moved. And this is, I can say up front, this is the biggest all-season story I've ever covered. I didn't cover the Lane Kiffin thing, so I doubt it touches that. But as far as my experience covering Tennessee football, this is the most shocking, largest all-season story I've ever covered. Let's think about where we are, Dave. I mean, we're not even a year removed from Nico Iamaleava being the most hyped player to ever be at Tennessee since Peyton Manning, at the very least. Tennessee opened the checkbook to get him. They then declared open war on the NCAA on his behalf. I mean, we can't let that slide. Like, they literally changed college football and the guardrails surrounding NIL on Nico Iamaleava's behalf. And ironically, those guardrails ended up, Nico used it against them, funny enough.
No, you're right. And from our reporting and others that have been on the program, and we join you 10 a.m. wherever you podcast or on YouTube. So check us out on weekdays. This is a special edition. But from those I have spoken to, I believe it kind of played out like this. I believe that Nico went to Tennessee and wanted a little bit more money and perhaps wanted some more help in terms of another wide receiver, another offensive lineman, perhaps. And he was not able to get exactly what he wanted, or the two parties were negotiating. Then it's my understanding that somebody within Tennessee's administration, or possibly the Spire Group, leaked out that they were in contract negotiations. That is not what Nico's family wanted, because it makes him look bad. Whether or not it should make him look bad, when you're negotiating right before the orange and white game, Caleb, it makes you look bad. And I think that, and I wrote this in a column that'll be up on offthehooksports.com, the Nico camp is too soft to keep around. Period. End of discussion. He can go play at Southern California. He can go play at Oregon. He can play someplace that's not the SEC or even the upper tier of the Big Ten, because there's too much criticism. And if his family's going to react so adversely to criticism about a contract negotiation, what are they going to do if he jumps out of bounds again, like he did against Arkansas? Tennessee fans gave him the benefit of the doubt last year because he was young. They're not going to give him the benefit. They wouldn't have given him the benefit of the doubt moving forward.
No, they wouldn't have. They wouldn't have. I mean, there was going to be a very big, if you're going to hold out like this, you had better perform. And I mean, for the record, we'll go to the pro level for 1 second. Everybody understands when players hold out for money at the pros, but even this, Dave, you're a Cowboys fan. If a person holds out for money, you're going to be all over them if they don't perform at the pro level, right? So what do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen to them at the college level at that when a lot of people don't think they should be getting paid in college. So, I mean, this was a really brazen move. And I'm not the biggest fan of him in a lot of ways, but I got to give Clay Travis one shout out here because he brought up a great point on Twitter, which is this. How short-sighted of this is Nico Iamaleava's family? Because we've talked about it all the time on this show with tripping over, what is it Calipari said, tripping over nickels in search of dollars, where Nico Iamaleava, this was his potential draft year and a system he's played in for 2 years now. You now have to go learn a new system in 4 months, wherever you go. And you did that over what, $1 million and a half in NIL cash? And you could be leaving because of that 20 to 25 million in NFL draft money on the table if things don't work out. This is one of the most short-sighted moves I think I've ever seen by a quarterback and his family.
It was an emotional move, one that I wonder if some other Tennessee players might follow. Mike Matthews went to California to be with Nico Iamaleava. Do you wonder if Mike Matthews enters the transfer portal? Do you wonder if other players, maybe not out of any sort of allegiance to Nico, but just, whoa, where's this ship going? Maybe they jump ship and enter the transfer portal. Now, on Tennessee's side, this is a terrible time to enter the transfer portal. Spring, you're likely not going to have any impact this fall based off the guys that we've seen jump in the transfer portal. So that would be on Josh Heupel's side in terms of keeping guys on his roster. But would you be surprised if another player or two jumped?
Not after this. And, we, because let's talk about what happened here. I think you and I both agree, right, Dave? What happened is there was negotiations. They didn't like what happened Thursday night. So Nico, out of emotion, held out of practice Friday. And Josh Heupel said, you hold out of practice, that's it. You're gone. That's how this worked out, right? I mean, he was effectively kicked off the team.
Well, I don't know. I think it was both. I mean, I think if he wakes up Saturday morning and calls Josh Heupel, who tried to get in touch with him, I'm told, for the better part of a day and a half, and he would only talk to Joey Halzle. He told Joey Halzle on Friday night that he had his papers signed and he was out the door, according to Chris Lowe. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of one of those who dumped who things, Caleb. I mean, if Nico called Josh Heupel on Saturday morning and said, I really want to still be a Vol, I think there would have been a spot for him.
Okay, so you think it was the lack? You think it was the lack of communication from both sides that really set this up?
Yeah, I think both sides acted. Well, I think Nico's side acted incredibly immature. To my understanding, Josh Heupel tried to reach him for 36 hours and wasn't able to get a hold of him, and he'd only speak to Joey Halzle. So I think Tennessee did everything they could to keep him. When you skip practice and then you tell the offensive coordinator on Friday night that you're bolting, well, yeah, sure, kick him off at a team meeting the next day. But nevertheless, I'm not going to get into the semantics of who quit and who got kicked off and that sort of thing. I just think it's better, and I want to talk about the options that Tennessee has. I just think it's better because there was a fundamental flaw in Nico Iamaleava's camp, and that is they were soft. This isn't the only occasion where, I mean, I got blocked by Nico 2 years ago, and I thought that was a red flag. It was from something very trivial as well. So I just think they were overly sensitive from the get. And let's point to Casey Clausen for a second, who some people said didn't care enough. I always thought that was silly. He always took things in stride. But maybe Nico's family, also being from Southern California, cared too much. They cared too much about how they were perceived. And ultimately, that was their undermining. Because if they'd have just let things played out, you're right. He's, at worst, a third, fourth round draft pick next year. And he can go his merry way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is something that they could have, you ride the wave and you take the licks and you call it a day for your NFL draft future. And I mean, let's be honest on this. Now, not only are you hurting your draft stock, but where you're going, but Dave, you don't think this is going to come up when he is going to the NFL draft? You don't think this whole situation is going to be brought up to NFL GMs?
I can go ahead and tell you right now, there will be character issues when he goes into the NFL draft. And it's one thing to have character issues if you're James Pierce, an edge rusher. It's another thing as a quarterback. You do not want your quarterback to have character issues. Now, I will say this, maybe at that point he split himself from his dad and his family, which is probably a good move. I do feel bad for the young man before we get into possible replacements. I do feel bad for the young man. I think he was caught in between. From everything that I've been told, he loves Tennessee. He loves Tennessee football. He loves Josh Heupel. And this is a situation where guys were calling the shots above him, that being his dad in that camp. Now, let me clear this up. I'm not going to name names, Caleb, but this doesn't shock me as much as it shocks you because I've covered a lot of parents of current players at Tennessee. It's a great way to get news and build sources. They're all upset about how much or how little Johnny's playing. So this is not surprising to me. The difference is now with NIL and the transfer portal, you have more leverage.
Right. I mean, you have more leverage, but you also have to be careful with how you play your game. Look, here's what you call them soft, and I get that, but this strikes me as a quarterback, as a father who look, we need to put all the blame here on Nico's father, because we can go ahead and call out what we're seeing here. Nico's father, and I put this on as you noticed on my thumb yesterday, Dave, when we talked about his family, he's a LeVar Ball wannabe. And Nico's father he thinks that he can be a legitimate agent for his son and that he can be a legitimate negotiator. And in reality, he's in over his head and has no idea what he's doing. And honestly, Nico Iamaleava, and this is my advice from Madden too at Arkansas, Madden Iamaleava. Y'all got to make a decision here. This guy has no idea how to negotiate, how to promote his kids or whatever. And he's going to sabotage both of y'all for what he thinks is the smartest thing to do. Because he's been raised in this, not raised, but he has followed the culture, I'm sure recently, of athletes with the self-promotion to get big paydays. And it's worked. And he's thinking like what Deion Sanders does with his kids, what LeVar Ball did with his kids. But at the end of the day, there's an art form to it, isn't there, Dave? You don't just blindly do this. And you're going to, this is an advice to Nick Iamaleava. You're going to sabotage both of your kids. And look, I got to be honest, Dave. I think part of this is not only that, it's added pressure on Nico Iamaleava. I'm with you. I think he's a good kid, and he's caught between a rock and a hard place. He loves Tennessee. He loves Josh Heupel. I don't think he likes the situation he's in right now. He doesn't want to be doing this, but I feel like his dad is strong-arming him, and he can't bring himself to break from his dad. But Nico, break from your dad. He's screwing you. I'm just going to say it up front.
Yep. Let's take a look at who Tennessee could replace them with. Obviously, Jake Merklinger is listed as a second stringer. You would think he would have the best opportunity given the fact that he's been on campus for a year. But then you have George McIntyre, the true freshman, who is actually higher rated. So I will tell you that from looking at tape of both players, I think McIntyre has a better upside. I think he's far more mobile. I think Merklinger is a bit heavy-footed when compared to Nico and McIntyre. I like McIntyre's game a lot. The flip side is he needs to put on weight. Merklinger has had the year head start. So, Caleb, that they would go one of those two directions. I would think Merklinger. Then the other option is a spring transfer portal quarterback. Listen, it's difficult as a running back, which is the easiest position to make a transition in football. It's easier. It's difficult at running back to make a transition in the spring transfer portal. It's even more difficult as a quarterback. I find it highly unlikely, like less than 1%, that Tennessee goes and scoops up a quarterback in the spring transfer portal and he plays any sort of impact role this fall.
The only way I could see them doing that is if they pick like a fifth-year senior and then they make McIntyre the guy. Look, I'm just going to say it. I don't think Heupel wants Merklinger to be the guy long-term, but Dave, Merklinger is only a sophomore. So if he's ahead of Heupel, if he's ahead of McIntyre now and you start him this year, what are you going to do? Start him and then have McIntyre beat him out in the spring next year? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I want to get into the contention. I want to get in contention that you and I talked about. And that was the possibility that you could just say, to heck with it. Let's go McIntyre. You get 4, maybe 5 years out of him. He's a Tennessee guy. He's not going to bolt and leave like Nico. And that's a possibility, Caleb. But you're suddenly in year 5, not year 3. So Josh Heupel needs to win. But I think if you think Merklinger's, I've said this before, some of these debates off position battles are closer than you think. So if it's 60-40 Merklinger, you might go at what I believe is your contention, and that is go ahead and get McIntyre in there, grow with him. But I don't know that you can because you're in year 5 now. And if Josh Heupel puts up an 8-burger, if they win 8 games this year, he's on the hot seat heading into 2026.
You don't think he's bought himself another year, given how this just happened? I think Josh Heupel may have bought himself another year, and I think he also won the team. I'm not the team, won the fans over with him taking the stance, because he kind of made it clear that he's not going to back down on certain situations. I think he weirdly, I don't think he's going to be on the hot seat if the next year's a transition year. I think people are going to kind of understand how it all played out.
Listen, during the season, immediately after, I'd agree with you. But we're sitting here in the middle of April, right? And we didn't think that Nico was going to be gone this time a year ago. I mean, Josh Heupel, if he puts up an 8-burger and you have the entire fan base talking about it in the offseason, I'm not sure that he's not on the hot seat headed into 2026. I see your point, but I think that short term, that feel good is short term. By the way, click on that like button if you don't care. We've got a ton of people in here, the thumbs up button. And let's go ahead and set it as a poll question. Are you glad that Nico Iamaleava is gone? Boy, did you think we'd be asking that question just 48 hours ago? I certainly did not. 30 seconds from our friends at Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. T. Scott Jones, and we're going to get Caleb a throat lozenge as the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We get your reaction in 30 seconds.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
All right, so what do we got, Caleb, as far as our poll question? And we'll see where that goes.
So right now the poll question, are you glad that Nico Iamaleava is gone? Yes, good riddance. And no bad situation for Vols. And man, we have a lot. I love how we got a ton of people on right now. I put that up less than 30 seconds ago, and we already have 48 votes, guys. So keep on voting. Now we're at 50 votes. 78% say yes, good riddance, and 21% say no, bad situation for Vols.
All right. Tennessee will move on without Nico Iamaleava. And I think the overwhelming reaction from Tennessee fans is, way to go, Josh Heupel. You should have done this. You should have taken a stand. That being said, what do you think went through Josh Heupel's mind? Because while it seems to be playing out well for Tennessee now and his fan base is rallying behind him again, I'm not so sure that's going to be the case if things go south this football season. So I can't imagine Josh Heupel making a more difficult decision in his career. On one side, you have who is clearly the better quarterback of the three, the best quarterback of the three that you have on the roster. He is the most talented, yet he probably didn't quite live up to the billing that you thought initially. Plus, he's been an off-field issue. But at the end of the day, Caleb, I think you'd agree with this. Tennessee has an opportunity to win the most games with Nico, a happy Nico, a confident Nico. But this had to be a difficult decision for Josh Heupel.
Oh, it had to be a very difficult decision. I mean, I don't think Josh Heupel wanted to do this at all. I think Josh Heupel, look, he loves Nico Iamaleava. He genuinely does. I think that I think that Josh Heupel and Nico Iamaleava did share a special bond. And I think I think it was the family around Nico Iamaleava that was doing this. And I think that his dad, I'll say this. I think there was an emotional moment. You're probably right by them skipping Friday practice, but I think they were expecting Tennessee to budge and come crawling back and like begging at that point. Here's the way I'm starting to wonder if this happened, Dave. They skip practice and they think Tennessee will come crawling back and decide we're going to offer you all the NIL money now. And Tennessee never did that. Tennessee didn't blink. And I think that's how this went down. I think even after Nico skipped practice yesterday, there is a situation in which he still would have been willing to come back to Tennessee, but Tennessee would have to debase themselves in a way that Josh Heupel wasn't willing to do. And I think the fact that he wasn't willing to do that speaks volumes for him.
I think sometimes, Caleb, we can say in retrospect, we can look at it through orange colored glasses. We can say, oh, Josh Heupel took a stand. And in reality, that sounds like recruiting when a guy decides to go somewhere, not your school. Oh, we didn't really want him. You hear people say that.
Yeah, Tennessee fans really wanted Nico. Trust me.
Yeah. But in this particular case, because Josh Heupel went down and threw down the gauntlet, which he did at a team meeting, Nico informed Joey Halsey, according to Chris Lowe's reporting, on Friday night that he had filled out the paperwork and that he was likely gone. But if you're Josh Heupel and you wanted to get strung along, you could do that. You could say, well, you can enter the transfer portal, but let's still work on negotiations. But you can't do that with a quarterback. And Josh Heupel was a smart enough coach, even being young, that he saw that. And he said, I'm throwing down the gauntlet right now. You're gone. And it said that in front of the team. So he repossessed, secured the narrative. And had he not done that and got strung along by Nico, it would have been a PR debacle next week.
I agree. Now, as far as what happens with do you think, let's ask this question. Do you think dominoes are going to fall? I know you mentioned this a little while ago. Do you think there's about to be a mass exodus of the spring portal because of how the Nico situation was handled? Like, do you think Mike Matthews is gone? Do you think Boo Carter's gone? Do you think?
I'm going to say no for a couple of different reasons. I think that Mike Matthews and Boo Carter have fantastic roles awaiting for them. And the other factor, it's the spring transfer portal. If we were having this discussion in January, heading into that transfer portal, I would have been like, uh-oh, this is bad. But any player that has any representation, that can talk to an agent, or that has any common sense whatsoever, needs to know that they can't go somewhere and expect to be an impact player like they'll be at Tennessee, speaking specifically of Matthews and Carter, like they would be at Tennessee. They're not going to go someplace else and pick up an offense/defense and be an impact player.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And I also think that, look, we know this. As far as like guys who can galvanize troops, this is why I'm kind of high on McIntyre over Merklinger. Well, okay, caveat. First, we got to see if McIntyre can put on the weight for fall camp, right? That's why I wanted Nico held out 2 years ago as a starter. I know you thought they should just start him immediately, but I thought Nico was really small. We got to see if McIntyre will get there. But if what you're saying is true, I go ahead and go all in on McIntyre, because I think McIntyre and Mike Matthews could have a real connection on their own. And you can get them for 2 years, because Mike Matthews has to be in college for another year after this year. You can get 2 years with McIntyre thrown to Mike Matthews. That's a duo, and that's a duo that you would love. And then you got 4 new offensive linemen that would all be back next year. So I think that, look, I think you could maybe get to 9-3 this year with that, if you're lucky. And then you could have a lot of excitement heading into 2026.
Yep. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer, tedrussellford.net, tedrusselllincoln.net. Where does Nico go, and how does this affect your preseason predictions for the Vols? I'll go ahead and tell you, it knocks a game off mine, as the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location.
All right, Caleb, does this affect your prediction for Tennessee's upcoming season? I had Tennessee at 10 wins. I will adjust it down to 9 without Nico. Listen, I like Merklinger. I like McIntyre. I think this is the right move for the program, but they're not going to get the same quarterback play they would have gotten with a ready to go, which is maybe a reach, Nico.
No, I mean, I'm with you. And I actually have 8-4. I think they're losing to Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And I've watched this team enough now to know that there's another upset loss coming somewhere. Whether that be at Mississippi State, at Kentucky. You know how this team is. I mean, there was last year's Arkansas game, there was the Columbia collapse. My bet is that it's at Mississippi State, September the 27th. That just seems like a game that they would drop in an upset. You know how they tend to do that. So I got 8-4 now, honestly.
Okay, some possible destinations for Nico. I don't think he is going to go to a school in which Tennessee has to play, which is a good.
Well, he can't. You can't. This is the thing that people forget. You can't transfer to an SEC program in the spring portal.
Well, right, but I mean, theoretically, he could have gone to Syracuse. I mean, I don't think Tennessee is ever going to have to face him, which is a good thing.
He's going to USC probably. Let's be honest. Lincoln Riley is like rolling out the red carpet for him, isn't he?
Am I the only one that said I didn't like the fact that he was going to LA with Mike Matthews? Now, if Mike Matthews bolts to Southern California, can I get some love, Caleb? Because
absolutely.
I didn't like anything about that.
No, that's true. You didn't. You felt a little weird about that. If that happens, I'll sing your praises, and I'll be like that would be one of the best calls you made. And it wasn't even an evidence-based call. It was like an intuition call, honestly, at that point.
I didn't like anything about him taking one guy and picking favorites. Now, a couple of schools that he's been tied to, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Southern California. It's probably going to be Southern California. And I will go ahead and say this. I hope that there's a way that those two teams match up in the college football playoff, Tennessee, and wherever he goes. I hope that there's a rematch there. The NCAA basketball committee is notorious for that, matching up guys in the first or second round that have good storylines. We'll see if the college football playoff does that. But
what about Colorado? Someone just threw that on the message board. This screams Deion Sanders, right? Trying to stick it to another blue blood program from a recruiting perspective.
Yeah, it does. It does. Go ahead and click that like button, thumbs up. We greatly appreciate that. And does Tennessee fall to a 7-5 team? I don't think they fall to a 7-5 team, but I think you have to look at 8-4 as a realistic possibility. 9-3, that's about the best you're going to do. Maybe 10. I don't see 10 now.
No, I don't see how 10 is on the table now. Again, I mean, first of all, does anybody think that with a first-year starter, we know Tennessee's history in the swamp. Does anybody think they're going to win at Florida this year when Florida could actually be a really dangerous team? And does anybody think they're going to beat Georgia in September? Here's the only thing that could work in their favor, Dave. Can I tell you something crazy that might work in their favor?
Wait on me.
I think last year, one of the reasons Josh Heupel's system didn't work was because of all the hype about Nico, and because of what everybody saw. I think that's why teams sold out to the 3-3-5 high safety defense. What if the lack of faith after what happened last year, Nico being gone, leads to teams cheating up a lot more, and there's a lot more easy, open routes for whichever player starts a quarterback this year?
Possibly. We'll see. All that's a real possibility. The bottom line is Tennessee, you hope, had a plan in place. And I don't know that they did or didn't, but they should have, because Nico's dad was a pain in the rear. Now, this was a 1 in 100, 1 in 10 chance that it would go this far south, but still, you had to be aware that was a possibility. And I would hope that that's the case with Josh Heupel. Listen, I also thought there was a narrative that was passed along. But is it JD Pickell? What's his name?
JD Pickle?
Yeah, I think we're mispronouncing his name. Sorry, JD. But it was an obvious leak. Tennessee has a leak somewhere in their football department. And people threw it on Spire yesterday, and it may be Spire, but I think it's a leak in Tennessee's football department. And I don't know if it's Joey Halzle. I don't know who it is, but I know that Nico only wanted to speak to Joey Halzle in the final 36 hours before he bolted. And I know that JD Pickle, whatever his name is, Cucumber, I know that he reported that Tennessee needed Nico Iamaleava. And I mean, you're not going to like what I have to say about Tennessee here, because I think it was orchestrated. Tennessee needed Nico to be more vocal. And JD reports that on like a Monday night. And then Tuesday, who's available to the media? Joey Halzle and Nico Iamaleava. That was premeditated, and that was orchestrated to put some pressure on Nico. Don't think for a second that wasn't. And don't think that the Nico camp didn't notice that and probably didn't like it. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Rat. Yeah, you do. You've got a rat too, in terms of somebody leaking out that there were contract negotiations. Sorry, Caleb.
Spoiler alert, in the age of NIL, in the age of Vegas and legalized sports gambling, in the age of the transfer portal, every school is going to have a rat. Nothing's safe anymore. Nothing's secret. It's like the NFL. You know this, Dave. I mean, is anything secret in the NFL at all? You can't really conceal anything.
No,
in the
and you
NFL.
don't know to trust anything because it's just like the James Pierce has character issues. Well, that could be by the Dallas Cowboys hoping that he falls into their lap at like pick 18 or 20. So you
Yeah.
can't believe anything. And I'm going to go ahead and tell whoever the leak might be, or Nico and his family, y'all need to chill out because you don't know how to play this game. There are agents that get paid millions and millions of dollars to play this game in the NFL. And there are parents that get the hell out of the way. So you need to be careful. And the worst thing would be is for one of these Tennessee leaks, and I believe they have one, it would be terrible if they were discovered. They would certainly lose their job, even if it didn't go public. And it's going to be terrible for any other prospects that come along the park and come along and think that they should be, they should play more. I just, it's a total mess. And I don't think Tennessee really had an option. Did Tennessee have a choice?
No, they had to move on. I mean, one, how do you, if you're Nico, just be honest, if you ghost a team for a day and a half, Dave, you covered team chemistry. Can you ever win your teammates back after that?
What's more challenging, Heupel winning his team back without his star quarterback, or Nico winning his team back despite flirting with every school in the West Coast?
I think it's Nico winning his team back despite flirting with every school. It's one thing if you hold out in like January, but you just did a whole spring practice with these guys. 3 weeks of spring practice, and the day before the spring game, you skip practice?
Okay, purely from a morality standpoint, I'm with you. But players tend to back players. So it might be more difficult for Josh Heupel to pull this thing together.
Do players tend to back, but when you covered players backing players, that was pre-NIL. Do players tend to back players in the NIL age? I mean, aren't there going to be a lot of players that are going to look at Nico and be like, this guy's making way more than me, and I'm here busting my butt for Tennessee and for him every day, and he does this? No. Isn't that how that's going to be read?
It could be. I still think the players want the players to get the most they can.
To give you an example on that, quarterbacks, for instance, in the NFL, you hear of holdouts with every other position. You don't hear a lot of holdouts with quarterbacks, right? Because if a quarterback holds out, that's really bad for team chemistry in the NFL, isn't it?
Yeah, it's disastrous.
Yeah. So they try to pay players in the NFL, or quarterbacks. I mean, they try to pay the quarterbacks. The quarterback is different from every other position. They're already, people feel like, the most protected, the biggest star. They're making the most money. I feel like this is the one instance where you may not be protective of Nico if you're a player.
All right, we'll see. I think that Mike Matthews is evident by going to Los Angeles and perhaps looking at Southern California. I don't know. I just think it's a possibility. I think that it's evident they're willing to follow Nico. But morality, you're right. Okay, but players tend to be allegiant to players. All right. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, a special presentation of the program. If you haven't been a part, then be sure and click that subscribe button as we broadcast live each and every weekday at 10 a.m. We'll visit with you on Monday, unless another quarterback decides to leave Tennessee's football program, we'll jump in on Sunday as well. So a special edition of the program. We thank our friends Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, and Ted Russell Ford Lincoln at the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln